Ken, welcome in.
Thank you, Tim.
Looking forward to talking it over with you. We start at the very beginning in our conversation, and we start with the birthday. Born July 21st, 1946. What can you tell me about your parents, siblings, and your early childhood memories?
Yeah, mother, father. Father actually was in the Second World War.
Oh, wow.
And he went overseas, and
where did he go?
He went to France. Actually, he actually landed in Normandy and that, and it wasn't in the first wave. I mean, he was in the second, third wave coming in, but he was sort of my hero in that regard. He was a good soldier. He was a tech sergeant, and he sort of wanted to make a career out of it, I think, from what I heard. And what happened was the Battle of the Bulge. Him and an officer, he was driving an officer in a Jeep, and they had an accident and broke both of his legs. So that was the end of his Army career, you might say.
Yeah.
But my mom was 10 years younger than my dad. So when he died in he was 62. So she was only 52 when he died, and which it sort of sunk in a little bit later in my life
to not have
the difference of ages and that, because she was only 52 years old.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy, but she died 10 years later, and two great people.
When you think of their person, when you think of them now, what comes to mind? Personalities, or how they carried themselves?
Yeah, they were great people. Rural mentality. Both of them grew up on farms, you might say, and out in the New Mali area. You know where that's at,
sure.
Defiance.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's mother died when he was 6 years old. So basically, he grew up as an orphan. His dad never spoke a word of English. He was German, and I guess all I can think of is he couldn't take care of him. So my dad went to one family, and his sister went to another family. So they basically grew up as orphans, you might say, what they call in those days.
Right,
but,
sure.
It was, I'm pretty sure it was pretty rough, but good mechanic. He turned out to be a great mechanic, and my mother grew up on a farm, and she had two sisters and a brother, and she really enjoyed the farm life, you might say,
mm-hmm.
The rural,
mm-hmm.
part of it. And although we grew up in St. John's, you might say. You know where St. John's is,
sure.
In that area, and and I had a sister. Her name was Sandy. She died at 62. So all three of them died within, like I say, a young age.
Mm-hmm.
You might say, 62 years old. Great lady, very kind, very giving. But I miss her to this day. It's sort of ending of an era when she died.
Sure.
Because of all the connections with the family and that. And she had all those.
Mm-hmm.
But and I also have a brother, but he was 13 years younger than I was. So when I went into the Army, I was 19. It was in 1966. I was 19 years old. He was 6 years old. So we were sort of, you might say, I wouldn't say estranged, but you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It wasn't
I know
as
exactly.
close
My
as...
sister's 13 years younger than me, so I can relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And, it's... I always wanted a brother, just a little closer to my age, you might say.
Yeah.
But we get along fine. He's a great guy, and, we play... He's a golf fanatic also, and... loves his golf, and it's just a good guy. He's they have a house in Carmel, Indiana, and they also have a house down in South Carolina. They live a nice life, and so that's really the background of the family, you might say.
You talked about St. John.
Yeah.
What was you're growing up for the most part in the 1950s?
Right.
What was when you think of your childhood and growing up? What are your memories?
Well, it was strange in a way. I never went to kindergarten. I could never understand that.
Everybody going to kindergarten. They just said go to first grade.
That's what I did. I guess I was too smart for kindergarten. I don't know. But probably not. But somehow I missed kindergarten. So, I remember, just a good upbringing, basically, good parents. Remember several things. My grandfather, or my dad's dad, lived with us for a few years. He died at 86, but he never spoke a word of English. I'd go out. He'd go out in the front yard, down by the driveway, bring a chair down, and he'd sit down. He was just an old German, and he'd have an egg, and he'd poke a hole in that egg. I just floored me. Poked it, and he'd sucker that egg. And I'm thinking to myself, Grandpa, what are you doing? But he couldn't speak English, because he couldn't explain it to me, but it must have tasted pretty good. But he was a great guy. He stayed with us until his death, but so that was, but the upbringing was good. I went to Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Wellston. I remember that. For my first grade, and then, then second grade I went to Home Heights, and then I went to Hope Lutheran from third grade to, to eighth grade, and then I went to Rittner High School.
Yeah.
61 to 65, but back then it was the largest high school in the state of Missouri.
Oh, Rittner was
we had over 1,000 graduates in my class.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a huge high school.
And I don't want to tell you what I graduated, what rank I was, but it wasn't pretty.
I hope it didn't have 4 digits.
It didn't. No, it did not have 4 digits.
Because that would make this one hell of a success story.
Well, it is one hell of a success story anyway.
Just overcoming an incredible amount of adversity.
Really. I'm just not. I guess I'm not as dumb as I look, you might say, or my grades might have presented itself.
How did you spend your time growing up? A lot of guys growing up in the 50s were playing ball of some kind.
I didn't play a lot of sports early on, like a lot of kids.
Sure.
Like a lot of kids. I mean, I started Todd. I think he was 5 or 6 years old. He was playing football and basketball and stuff like that. Yeah. But there was none of that. I mean, like I say, my parents had a rural mentality, and I think that was a lot of. It was just a lot of playing around that they like to see more work out of you. You might say, not that they were cruel or anything. I mean, they were great parents, but I just didn't play a lot of sports.
Yeah. Did their style of raising you teach you a work ethic? Do you think
it did?
Yeah,
it did. My dad, my dad worked, I guess 12 hours a day. But through high school, I worked with my dad. He worked at a company called Westside Refrigeration. He was repaired washing machines, basically, is what he did.
Yeah.
And had a good mechanical background, and I worked with him through high school a couple of days a week, And yeah, he gave me him and my mother did give me a good work ethic. Yeah. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah. And that's invaluable.
It is invaluable, and you see it today. Mm-hmm. Of kids that are taught that ethic, I think, are really a lot better off in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. You carry that throughout life. Yeah, it really might not be pleasant as you're learning it, but it's valuable as you go on.
And the next thing was the Army. I was in there 2 years, and I was drafted naturally in '66 during the Vietnam War. But that taught me really. I mean, you grow up immediately. At 19 years old, you go in the Army. You really grow up fast.
Take me through that process and that experience as much as you're comfortable. I know some people don't necessarily want to talk about it. Some people.
Well, it doesn't bother me, but mainly because I wasn't in a combat zone.
Right.
That was key.
I'm sure you have plenty of peers who were.
I did.
Being drafted, I mean, just that and becoming aware of that. What was that like for you and your friends?
Well, 19 years old, all you're hearing about is people dying over there, right? In Vietnam. So that at 19, it just wears on you really to the point where you get callous to it in a way. Because I was in the infantry the whole time. I mean, when I went in, I went to Fort Leonard, Fort Ord, and then I went to Hawaii, which sounds like good. It was a good break for me, because what they were doing was they were training a whole unit to go, which they never did before, the whole unit to go to Vietnam. And they were doing it in Hawaii, and they sent me over there, and they waited too long. There was like there was an unknown law that was on the books that if you had less than 8 months in the service, you couldn't go to a combat zone. Well, I had 7 months and 28 days when the levy came down for us to go to Vietnam. So they sent there was about 500 of us. They sent about 500 of us to Thailand. So I went to Thailand for the next virtually 8 months, basically, and that was my career in the service. And I'm very lucky.
I was about to say. I mean, do you think about that? I mean, that math.
It's luck. It was simply luck because.
Were you aware of that, or was it an after the fact?
No, I was very aware of it. I mean, everybody's in Vietnam, but me, and I'm infantry. It just seems strange, but. Like I say, sometimes luck's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And it was
That's
for
both
me.
ways.
It was for me. I'm a slow mover anyway. I mean, God forsake that, it surely got me. But it was really a break.
So you came back to the U.S. from Thailand?
Then I came back to the U.S. from Thailand, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I've spoken with a few Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
And, of course, everyone having different experiences.
Right.
Some were in Vietnam. Some had a somewhat similar, although yours is quite a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And what those guys talk about, and it's not something that we can relate to, because if anything, I noticed in the first Gulf War in 1991, there was a concerted effort to make sure that the troops felt support, whereas I think that was a conscious effort to overcorrect from what took place with your peers in the 60s and 70s when they came back, and all they were doing was following orders or getting drafted, and they were being chastised for doing so. Did you experience that?
No. I came through Oakland when I came back.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty hotbed of
absolutely.
The demonstrations and everything. And then naturally you go to San Francisco, the airport. I really never experienced any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I got back to the States, back to St. Louis, I never really experienced any of that. They yell at you, baby killer, and all this kind of stuff. And I never experienced that, and I see it on TV, and I see where it was done, but it was never. I never experienced that, in which I was very lucky.
Sure,
on that,
absolutely.
Because it's just not a pleasant thing. I mean, it's not your decision to go there.
Right.
I went there because the government said it's your time to go. Some people went to Canada instead.
Yeah.
But. I just went in and did my the 2 years and never really experienced any backlash on that.
That's
which was good.
Good. Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm sure it's traumatic for people that were cornered like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With the benefit now of hindsight, I suppose, and also some historical knowledge. How do you view that time, as close as you were?
I really don't have much opinion on it, except for the fact I think we could have won that war. I mean, it wasn't even called a war. It was called a conflict. But if they would have approached it right. But then the protest back in the States was really tough.
Sure.
So I'm sure all the leaders felt that, and it was best to get out. They just got out too late, Mm-hmm. I mean, they probably should have left there in, 68 or 69 or something like that. But if you stay, you got to stay to win. That was always my opinion, but I think probably should have never been there in the first place.
Yeah, when it all gets down to
exactly,
it. Right.
Exactly.
So you come back to St. Louis after being as close as you were to the Vietnam War,
right?
And now you're starting your adult life, even though you had just served the country for a couple of years. What are your next steps?
Well, I come back. I have $200 in my name, right? But I come back to my mom and dad's house, and I stay there, but immediately got a job. I got a job the next week.
Oh, wow.
And I stayed at that job for probably close to 15 years. And basically what I did was, in the process, eventually I printed Budweiser and Busch beer cans, is what I did, on metal. And it was, and I was, I did that, like I say, for close to 15 years, and probably would have stayed there. This is the ironic part, is I probably would have stayed in that job if the job didn't leave us. Anheuser-Busch owned 60%. I think Libby's owned 40% of the company. They decided to sell it or get out of the business. And so there's like 400 of us really out of a job. But luckily for me, I was going to, pardon me, I was taking some night classes at the community college. And, I think I started when I was 25 and eventually accumulated 85 credits, but 64 of them would transfer to UMSL. My whole idea was to get my bachelor's degree. But then when that job ended, a friend of mine who owns CK Supply in town offered me a job. And I always wanted to get into sales. And I asked him, I said, can I get into sales? And he says, yes. It took a couple of years, got into sales. By this time, I'm 33 years old, right? And I was in that job for 15 years. And I decided probably in my 12th year there that I think I can do this myself, with a little help. And so that's when I decided to start Delta Gases. That's the company that Todd runs right now. But it was, that wasn't an easy thing to do.
Yeah,
because of the capital expenditures, you buy these cylinders. What we basically do is distribute industrial gases and welding equipment. Well, the industrial gas part of it is a big thing because you got to fill these cylinders. You got to have. We buy it in bulk, in 6,000 gallon tanks, and we compress it into these cylinders. Well, the cylinders are very expensive. To this day, we probably own over $5-6 million worth of cylinders. Wow. We started out with zero, right, in 1995, and it really turned out to be a good thing. But it was hard in the beginning. I mean, it's like any business. You started businesses, I'm sure, and this is one of them. It looks pretty successful. And I just never had the opinion it wasn't going to make it. A lot of people, I'm thinking, start these businesses and they got a negative view, thinking down the line, well, 66% of new businesses don't survive, right? And I just never let that get in my mind. I just said it's going to make it.
Yeah, you make it work.
Because if it didn't make it, I'd be down at Busch Stadium selling pencils or something.
Yeah, so you got to make it work.
You got to make it.
So how did you get? How did you go from where you were to that? And how did you pull it all off? Because obviously there was expenses associated.
There were, and the key to the whole thing was I had a couple investors, right? That's the key. Because it was a lot of capital expenditures, cylinders buying, inventory. And I've told Todd this, I tell him that all the time. It was the borrowing power is what got me there. You got to be able to borrow money. And you got to have people believe in you that you're borrowing them from, borrowing the money from. And that was the key to that business because right now we do $20 million in sales. I got the first dollar we sold the first week we were in business. So we came a long way, but it wasn't because of. I mean, you know, I'm not a. I'm just an individual that likes to. I guess I like to take chances. I took a chance there, but there's nothing said that it was going to work out, just like it did. But you just persevere, you hang in there, and 28 years later, it's $20 million in sales. We got $5 million in assets, and it's just a good company.
Well, it sounds like that.
But a lot of it has to do with Todd. You know, I hired Todd, and well, that's a funny story in itself when I hired him.
So that was not like an automatic plan.
He was no. I eventually I did want Todd to work there.
Right.
But he worked when he graduated from Mizzou, which a lot of people do. They go to Enterprise. They were working at Enterprise. Matt McHugh was one of his buddies.
It's a running joke on our show that you go from Missouri to either Enterprise or Chicago.
There you
and then
go.
you wind up at Brentwood Forest, either way.
And so I had a guy leave me, and it was an inside guy. And so I took Todd to lunch. My investors did not want me to hire him.
Oh, wow.
And,
was that awkward?
Because it was awkward.
Yeah,
because relatives, you know, it's a relative
sure,
thing.
Yeah.
You know, what if he doesn't work out?
Right, yeah, that's a spot. That's a real thing, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I had enough confidence, and I thought Todd could do the job. And so we went to lunch, and we're leaving lunch. And he was all excited about coming to work. And as we're walking out the door, I said, Todd, if this doesn't work out, I said, we're still going to be best friends. And he looks at me, a quizzical look, you know, he looks at me and says, why wouldn't it work out? And I said, well, there's reasons sometimes that these things don't work out. But this guy has turned out to be a tremendous leader of a company, better than me, to be honest with you.
And what is it that makes him?
Well, he pays attention to everything. I mean, he's got a knack of just keeping track of the numbers, and I never thought he was a numbers guy. Matter of fact, I never thought I was a numbers guy. Yeah. But it sort of makes you become
100%. Absolutely.
It really does.
Yes.
Management is probably my weakest trait, and I worked at it hard. I'm still not very good at it probably, but I worked at it and got a little better at it. And those are the things that Todd does well. Everybody likes Todd. I mean, I have yet to find a guy that doesn't like Todd. You know, I mean, so that is key to be likable and be liked by your employees too. You know, and I always said in the beginning, I said I'm not going to let the little things bother me. I'm just going to worry about the big things, and the little things, if I just let them go by, and you know, just don't be, you know, all worked up about the little things. I think just concentrate on the big things and let it go.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I follow that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know, like, okay, the guy, for instance, an employee missed a day, but you find out his wife was sick or his kids were sick. I just pay him for it, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. I mean, those are the little things I'm talking about.
You build equity with your people.
You really do.
When you don't
nitpick
them.
And we have longevity. You know,
that's a great tribute to a business.
It is.
That's a great sign.
It is. I mean, our secretary's been there almost day one, and
is that right?
I got
wow.
Another guy that's been there from day one almost. So, yeah, we've always also got people that's already retired. You know,
wow.
And
started with the company?
Started with the company and retired. Yeah.
So since Todd and I are about the same age, you're starting this when he's in school in Missouri.
Right. That, I failed to mention that. I started this business when I was 48 years old.
Right. So I'm doing the math here. Like this is
crazy.
It's
crazy to start a business.
There's some bold mathematical outliers going on here.
I have people tell me this all the time. They said, "How did you deal with the stress and you're 48 years old. How do you start a company when you're 48 years old?" You know, I mean, I just had a vision that I could do it. And I mean, I don't want to make too much out of that part of it, but I did have a vision. I said, I think I can do this. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking of age at that time. I think more about age now.
Yeah.
And thinking, well, was I,
Yeah, sure.
was I an idiot to start this at 48?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if it fails, I had any money I had was invested in this company. So it was either do or die, you might say.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you did.
And I did it. I did it. And the next thing is a die, I guess. You know, but I don't want to talk about that.
Let's talk. We've talked about Todd. Let's talk about Heather.
Talk about Heather
as well. Tell me about your daughter.
So I asked Heather to go to work for me when I first started, and she was out of school maybe a couple of years, out of college. And she goes, Dad, I don't think that'll work. He says, we didn't get along that good when we lived together. I said, I don't know if I could work for you. I said, okay. I said, that's fine. I said, I just wanted to make sure you were involved, you know. And so she went on to have a good career and making a lot of money in her job. And but then she got into the family thing. She has 3 daughters. And so about 2 years ago, I asked her again because we needed help. And I said, Heather, I said, what do you think about coming to work? And she agreed. And what a godsend that was, because just like Todd, everybody loves her at work. She's got a great attitude, hard worker. Contagious laugh, you know. Her and I as you know, I'm probably going to turn that sound down a little bit because I'm loud. I don't even realize I'm that loud, and I've been that way all my life. But Heather's the same way. So we get together. I mean, everybody's got to go in the shelter, you might say. You know, say what is going on there? They're too loud. But she's been a great asset, and really like. I mean, how many people can say they can go to work every day and see their daughter and their
That's
son?
the best.
And we all get along.
Yeah,
you know,
and you're very and you're not just like, oh, I got to hire them because they're my son or daughter, and
right.
you know, this is going to be an expense that I'm going to have to deal with.
Right.
They're playing a key role in the success of the business. I mean, that's got to be a great experience, number one, but you also have to be incredibly proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want to forget Sandy.
Well, sure. Well, let's get this. Let's get to Sandy.
Sandy,
tell me about.
She worked at
Sandy.
She worked at the train wreck for train wreck. You've heard of that, right? She worked there like 17 years, I believe. And that's where I met her, and we've been married 22 years.
How about that?
And she came to work. How long have you been there, Sandy?
This is a real family business.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, my secretary's husband works there. You know, I got former nephews working for me. You know, and but you know, the funny part about it is everybody gets along.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen companies, you know, like mine that just doesn't work. Right. You know, family.
Yeah, it can be tough.
Some people get too aggressive, or they're not happy with where they're at, or blah blah blah. Well, I haven't had any of that.
Yeah.
People, if I got an open door policy, people can come to me with any problems, and very seldom it happens, but sometimes it does.
Sure.
You know, but family wise, I just haven't had any difficulties.
What a great thing.
And that's cool in itself. Because that's what my investors were afraid of.
Sure.
Well, what if Todd doesn't work out? You know, how does that work? You know, and I said, no, he'll work out. And I just went against their judgment there, although they were very good investors. You know? Yeah.
So they kind of pat you on the back and say, all right, you were right on this one now?
Yeah. Well, neither one of them are with us today, but they didn't get to see Todd running the company, though.
Yeah.
Todd's been running the company probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
And maybe a little longer than that, but they didn't get to see that. They got to see him at work, and he did a very, very fine job there, inside sales. But they didn't see him actually running the company, and he does a fabulous job. And the one investor of mine, he was my key guy. He was really almost like a father figure, you might say. And when he died, then it complicated things a little bit because what happened was him and his partner owned 52% of the company.
Yeah.
So we had to buy them out somehow, and we figured it out, and we got it done, and it really flourished even more after that.
Yeah.
Because it gave us a little more freedom to do some
Sure.
things, but believe me, I needed them in the beginning.
Yeah, otherwise you don't have the
I don't have the
capital to get
I don't
things
have the
off the
borrowing
ground.
power
Right,
to do it.
to
I
do
mean,
that.
I could. I mean, our line of credit was $650,000 before I started paying it off, and it's paid off today, but that's a lot on a line of credit.
Yes,
you know, banks start looking at you like, when you're going to pay this off,
Right.
you know, and you're just paying interest on it. Is all you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I needed them for that reason, and I thank them to this day
Sure.
that they helped it. I mean, that was really the key to making that successful.
A lot of people want to start businesses, whether they be 48. I'm sure some people who are 48, would watch this story and go, "Man, that is great," because clearly somebody can do it and did do it.
Yeah.
And then plenty of people have ideas, and then they don't ever do anything with them.
Right.
What would you say to somebody who is considering starting their own business, both with taking the step to start it and then also a key or keys to success?
Well, I almost did the same thing a couple years earlier. There was another salesman who was really a dynamic salesman, and another one of our vendors. He wanted to be in on it, so there was like three of us going to do it. That would not have been successful because I don't think we had the borrowing power. You know, we just didn't have it, and if you don't have the borrowing power, yeah, especially in that business. If you're in the restaurant business, I think the key to that is be there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep an eye on the register and stuff like that. There's not that much cash goes through our company. You know, it's all checks or ACH,
Right.
type thing. But in that kind of business or whatever, it's a little different. You still need the cash, but you need to really pay attention to the cash, to the money factor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't have to worry about that too much because there wasn't any cash coming through.
Right.
What I had to worry about is, can we borrow again?
Mm-hmm.
Can we borrow here? Can we borrow $100,000 here? I was really concerned with that, and I would give anybody. If they had a good backer, I would say if they had a good vision and were a hard worker, I would say go for it.
Yeah,
I really would.
Yeah.
It's a chance you're taking. If it fails, you could always try something else, especially if you're younger. 48, I'd be a little more, careful with that. I mean, because basically, it was a real chance.
Sure. Your chips were all in the middle.
They were all there. They were all there. Yeah, they were. But it worked out, and that's the key to the story.
You better believe it. You better believe that is the key. That is the key to the story.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have been spending much time on it.
We would.
Let's go through the disaster of 1996.
This interview is going to be 15 minutes.
Tell me about how you blew all your money. Let's talk about a few different. I always like to get people's perspective, and I know your family members oftentimes like to get people's perspective on historical events. You had to have been, I guess, in high school in November of '63 when President Kennedy was shot.
Yes.
And
I remember exactly where I was.
That's where I was
going. A mechanical drawing class,
Yeah.
and it came over the loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And it was a shock. I mean, it was, I think I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And it was quite a shock when that happened. And then I'm watching. I've always been keen on politics.
Mm-hmm.
I like to watch it for sure. But then when I was watching television and I saw that Ruby killed.
So you watched that live when that happened?
Yeah, Oswald. Yeah, I saw that live.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it was quite an experience. Yeah, that was.
I've talked with a number of people who view that particular day as kind of the beginning of the end of the innocence, so to speak. The 50s were the calm time, so to speak. The 1960s started one way and ended a different way. You were certainly close to that situation in Vietnam. You were, I guess, around 16, 17 when it happened?
Yeah. I viewed when I was 19. When I was 19, I'll never forget it. My sister's room was right across from mine, and it was a night. The next day, I had to go down to the Mart building, and I was, like I say, I was drafted and had to go down there to sign in. But remember talking to my sister that night, and I think I just grew up that night. I just felt like, I always felt like I was a kid before that. And then that night, I felt like, you go from a kid to a man, It's a strange feeling, but that's the feeling I had. Wasn't so much when Kennedy got shot. It was just a shock, nobody ever heard of anything like that. I mean, for years, I'm sure it's happened before, but that was a tragic thing, and it was a very popular guy.
Sure.
And it was something else, but it wasn't it wasn't that marker in my life.
Sure.
When I was 19, the day before I went in the Army was the night I changed.
When you're thinking that, going back and thinking that night, was that I would personally be scared out of my mind.
I was scared. I cried that night, and it was I don't know. It was just a night that I guess I'm thinking about my sister now. And bringing tears to my eyes. We were close.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure she's scared for you too.
Yeah.
So that was probably part of the conversation.
It was. Yeah. It was. And I knew people that have died over there. People I graduated with in high school went over there, and so I knew people personally that had died. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you think you're not coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
God, I was so lucky.
Yeah.
I guess I was lucky in business, lucky in.
But you create your own luck in a lot of ways.
Sometimes you do.
And certainly that could be the case. In the Vietnam situation, I think that was just 100%.
That was
incredible luck.
Incredible luck there.
One of the things you mentioned here, a question I always love to get people's perspective on is, how do you feel the world has changed in your lifetime? And you were just talking about a popular president, and you said for the better, the medical field, modern medicine, bypasses, procedures. Yes. Certainly, but for the worst, politics. The country is so divided.
Right.
The idea of a president being as popular as, say, President Kennedy at the time of his assassination, that seems like a foreign concept as you and I sit here in 2024. What is your observation on what has transpired with division in the U.S.?
Yeah, I just don't like it. I pay attention to it, and. I contribute a little money in politics, not a lot. But I have a good friend that's the senator, though, Senator Schmidt, Eric Schmidt. Mm-hmm. I was his coach in basketball.
Oh, is that right? Really?
Yeah, coached him in basketball. Still calls me coach. even though I was a bad coach. We never won anything, but, yeah. But so I pay attention to him and in politics in general. You can ask my wife. I don't watch a tremendous amount of it, but I probably watch 2 or 3 shows a day, and it just interests me. I don't know, always have.
Yeah.
Ever since I was young, it just interests me. But the division is something that I don't like. I just wish we'd get along a little more. I mean, get a little closer to the middle.
So when you observe it, as you made reference to, you've been following it for a good portion of your life.
Sure.
How do you compare and contrast what you see in 2024, say, to 50 or 60 years ago?
Oh, God, it's just, it's changed tremendously. But, I lived through the Carter years in the 70s with the tremendous inflation and going on. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of the 70s in that regard, the economy. Because of inflation more than anything, housing expense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the younger generation. I really do. I have a compassion in that regard
For their
because
ability to enter into the home.
to enter the home, afford a home nowadays is. I mean, it's close to impossible. And of course, wages have gone up considerably. Maybe that'd be helpful, but I think inflation's outpaced it. That's my biggest concern is inflation. You're always going to have the fringe, the fringe on the right, fringe on the left. You're always going to have that no matter what. So that doesn't concern me as much as, other things in politics.
Sure.
I mean, that's those fringes don't. I just wish we'd all move closer together, like be a Manchin, Senator Manchin, be like him.
A little more independent, I guess, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Don't be, just because your party says do this, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way you should go.
Right.
I think you need a little more, diversity in that regard, not be a strict party. I don't consider myself, even though I vote Republican most of the time, I voted for Gephardt, for instance, when I was in his district down south.
Yeah.
I consider myself a little more of an independent. If somebody came along in the middle and they were with one of the major parties, I don't like just throwing a vote away for a third party because it isn't going to happen right now.
Right.
I'm not saying it couldn't change in the future, but right now that isn't going to happen. But if somebody came along as a Democrat and was a little more down the middle, I'd vote that way.
Yeah.
I'd vote that way for that senator, anything.
I observe it, and I see it being a byproduct in part of the media.
Yes.
And I'm a part of the media, so I recognize I'm condemning that which puts food on my table.
Well,
but
we need it. We need the media.
But I just see it. I feel like it's hyperbolic and it contributes gasoline on the inferno.
It is. You never saw that before. Right. That was another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. That was something that back in the 90s and the 80s, you didn't see that. You didn't see that as much. There's such a division there. I mean, if you watch Fox, you're a Republican. If you watch CNN, you're a Democrat. I used to watch CNN all the time before it went a little bit too far the other way. I mean, and some of the guys I still like on there. Some of the, but it shouldn't be divided that much.
Right.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, you're not necessarily debating philosophy so much as you're debating what is true and false. And I think that that contributes to it. This is something that I wanted to get your perspective on because it's different for you with your family's involvement with Sandy, with Todd and Heather. What do you know now about living a happy and successful life that you didn't know when you were 20? And you talk about the importance of getting to see the kids grow up and achieve their dreams.
Right.
But that's one thing. But with you, it's kind of under the umbrella of what you have built. And I would imagine when you're 20 and you're just coming back or you're overseas, to think that would be your life, I would imagine that would have been tough to tell 20-year-old.
Yeah, I never really had any. I was always wondering when I was 20 what I was going to do. I had no clue. I really didn't. Like a lot of 20-year-olds,
sure,
basically.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's great the way everything turned out, but who would have known when you're 20 years old that my life would have turned out as good as it has? I mean, really, I've had a great life. I really have. I mean, not even before the business. I mean, so I never really had any real complaints about my life or my lifestyle. I've always been very proud of it and been very happy with it, But when you're 20, you have most kids have no clue that they're going to end up being the president of their own company, and blah blah blah. And it could happen. It could happen very easily.
Yeah.
And it's very rewarding when it does happen. I mean, I just consider myself a very lucky person. Yeah. I mean, I've used luck a lot in this conversation, but honest to God, you need a little luck.
What that conveys to me is humility, though, because you can't be lucky with your business if you didn't work hard.
No,
and also the courage it took to take the chance, whether you're 48 or 28, it doesn't matter. But as I keep saying, hard work and good people create luck.
People in the industry ask me all the time, why did you do it? How did you do it? And would you do it again? I would do it again, mainly because I know I was successful. But it is crazy when you think about it. I mean, the way everything turned out is just it's just a very good thing.
Yeah. Another thing that you wrote in answer to that question, Ken, is what do you know now about living a happy and successful life that you didn't know when you were 20? How much your health will play a huge part in your everyday life. Yeah, when you're 20, you feel invincible and you're not thinking about the things that you're thinking even at 40, much less, as you grow older. So I'm sure some of your young family members will watch this. Any counsel you would like to give?
I feel like I spent half my life in the doctor's office now. But one thing about it, health is everything. I mean, you're young. You'll realize that when you get older, but health is everything. And I just had a friend of mine die just a week ago. And you just think about it. Sandy's dad died about 3 weeks ago. But, you just feel like you're so lucky to get to the age I am and have halfway decent health.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm diabetic. I've had a heart bypass. But I've got past a lot of that stuff. You just keep an eye on the diabetic situation. The bypass, you try to eat better. I've lost a lot of weight, because of it. There's just things you do in life later, and you wish you'd have done them earlier. If I would have adhered to those things earlier in my life, I'd probably lived to be 100, right?
Yeah. What are some of those things? I mean, you're talking about being conscious of eating.
Well, let's put it. Eating is one thing, but drinking. Like to have a beer or two now.
Sure, absolutely.
It's just things like that. If you'd done a little more under control, maybe I'd have lived to be 100. And maybe I will anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Keep mentioning luck, right? Yeah. Hey, be lucky, live to be 100. No, that's what her dad wanted to. He was 88 years old. Yeah. He wanted to live to be 90, Yeah. But, you think at an older age and you think of things differently totally. I mean, like you say, you're invincible when you're 20. But when you're 77 like I am now, everything you do, you pay attention to your health, more. Mm-hmm. I don't remember doing that when I was younger.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I'd jump through hoops all the time, and do anything,
Yeah.
A lot of crazy things, but at 77, I'm glad just to get up to this office and speak to you.
Final question for you. Yes. Your family members will. Sandy is in studio with us.
Right.
Heather and Todd are outside, and I'm sure other family members will be watching and/or listening to this. Anything that you would like to make sure that you say to them, or any stories that you would like to share that we have not covered yet?
No, I really don't have any stories. They're aware of most of them, but I love them all. And, if you're watching, glad you're watching. And like I say, I love every one of you.
Well, this has been a pleasure. A real, not only incredible story, but also from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what a success story. Yeah. So
thank you.
It's really incredible. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing the stories.
Thank you, Tim.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you very much.
Great, man.